Andrea?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Go in 1 minute. Here we are. So it's done. We are live on YouTube right now.
Yep.
So hi, Andrea, again, and welcome everybody that is willing to spend this hour with us to talk about the becoming of Agile leadership in the Agile20Reflect Festival event. So we celebrate with these dialogues 20 years of the Agile Manifesto. My name is Wana Junku, and I will host this interview with Andrea. It's a great pleasure to have Andrea with us, a dear, dear friend from the Agile community and a thought leader in leadership, and also a very active member of the Agile community in Italy. He's organizing the Agile Business Day. Before we start the interview, I would like to share with you some logistic data. There's a link on my image, and I will also post the link in the chat. That is a huge sketching that will be done during all those dialogues and during the other events in French, and we would like you to contribute. You can grab, it's a mural, you can grab a post-it when you go to the link with the insights and whatever inspired you during this dialogue, and put your ideas there. And we have a team of visual facilitators that will turn your ideas into sketching. So please do contribute to this huge sketching. Okay, I will put the link later in the chat when everyone will be in. Oh, let's start our dialogue, Andrea. So I've presented already a little bit Andrea as a thought leader in Agile leadership in the Italian community, but also in the international community. Andrea, up to you to present yourself.
A
little bit.
Okay. Well, my name is Andrea Provaglio, and it's really a pleasure to be here. So thank you for inviting me, Anna. It's a long time no see, my dear. So, and thank you to all of you who want to spend this hour with us. So I'm a freelance, always been a freelance for the last 30 years. And I describe myself these days as someone who brings organizations into the 21st century. That's the way I like to think of myself, which means I like to help organizations to rethink the underlying paradigms under which they operate. And that, of course, means dealing with complexity, the complexity of the world in which we live today. And of course, Agile is a big component in being adaptive in complexity. I have a background in information technology, but I kind of left that past incarnation like 15 years ago. And for the last 15 years, I've been, then again, working with companies, with teams, with managers in many different sectors. Public sector, private sector, many different industries. So I had the pleasure and the privilege of observing many different ways in which Agile and business agility can be brought into a company. And I like to speak at conferences, well, when it was easier, because it's a good way for people to connect and to share, which is what I love to do. So that's me in a few words. And then again, I'm very happy to be here tonight.
Thank you, Andrea. So before we start our dialogue, and I have some favorite questions to ask you. I would like also to say to present to the participants that this will be around 40 minutes of interview with Andrea, and then it will be up to you to ask the questions. I will invite you, either you put them in the chat, you feel free to chat between yourself if you want to exchange ideas, but at the end, in the 20 minutes, at the end of this hour, if you have a question, you can take my place and ask those questions to Andrea. So my first question, Andrea, is about your journey toward leadership. I love to name this interviews the becoming of Agile leadership. So for me, the becoming really means, with the legacy of the past, there's something that is present and wants to become tomorrow. So I would like you to tell us, the participants today, what is your journey toward leadership?
Okay. As I mentioned, what I like to do is I help organizations to change. And change happens because someone wants to change. And the moment in which someone is able to influence their environment and bring about change, that is an act of leadership. I'm not sure we will talk more in detail about what leadership means, because it's also a very slippery word. It can mean very different things for different people. So we probably have to be more specific about what we mean by leadership. But in general, leadership is not the only thing I do in the Agile space. But I started asking myself the question, who are the people who are more likely to promote and support change? And the answer is the people who others want to follow. And when somebody is following you, you're a leader. So you're not a leader because you're appointed as a leader, you're a leader because somebody wants to follow you. And so starting asking myself questions, how we can help people become better leaders and better followers at the same time, because it's all about bringing change about. And so in terms of my own journey, of course, I looked at different, Anna, that I'm very conscious about the way I speak, about the things I do. And I believe that self-consciousness is an important trait in any form of leadership. I frequently say that you cannot communicate with anybody if you cannot communicate with yourself in the first place. And you cannot lead anybody if you cannot lead yourself in the first place. So I started from that, and also applying different coaching techniques. I explore different models of leadership. And today I have my own understanding of Agile leadership, which of course I'm very happy to share with you tonight along the conversation.
Thank you for that, Andrea. Before you share more about your model and what means self leadership, you said something about that it's really important that leadership is a slippery word. Can you share with us a good metaphor for leadership? What is leadership like, or true leadership for you?
Yes. In its simplest form, as I mentioned earlier, you lead because somebody is following you. There is no leader if there are no followers. So leading and following are basically two faces of the same coin. However, that being said, we have all seen in our personal lives and in the world, leadership, some forms of leadership that were not intended for the good of other people, but they were self-centered leadership. And that happens when you use your influence or your ability to manipulate others to your own advantage rather than for a greater goal. So in its simplest form, then again, you lead because somebody follows. The question is, which is the ethics by which you lead? What is inspiring you as a leader? And what are the real reasons why people are following you? We see today that using social media, you can steer the opinion of millions of people just using very smart psychological tricks to sway public opinion. So people don't really want to follow you. They think they want to follow you. So and that's clearly not a form of leadership that we want to promote if it is meant for the interest and for the sake of the leader. There are different, as I mentioned, there are different models of leadership. One which I like is it's called the DILT, Robert Dilt leadership model, in which basically you have one person and this person has a vision, something that this person wants to reach, hopefully to the benefit of other people. And this person operates in a certain system and also operates connected with other people. So these four elements, the individual, the vision, the system, and the other individuals in the system, creates the space in which the leader operates. But then again, this is just a neutral model. Then it all depends on which is the intent behind your leadership. So I don't know if I answered you on, as I said, it's a very slippery word. Oh, the other thing about these words, I'm sorry, you were going to say something, is that very frequently in organizations, we tend to confuse management with leadership. They're two completely different things. Management is extremely important. We need people in organizations which are able to manage. But usually I like to quote Grace Hopper, which many decades ago said, you manage things and you lead people, meaning that what a manager does is to taking care of stuff, like, for instance, contracts or finance or safety or infrastructure. So you have somebody who manages this stuff. You can also manage the relationship between the employees and the company if you are an HR manager, for instance, but you manage the relationship, you don't manage the people. You lead people, then again, when people follow you, not because of your authority, but because they believe in what you believe. And so being able to, in organizations, to make a clear distinction between the act of management, which is fundamental for an organization to operate correctly, and an act of leadership, being able to make this difference is very, very important. And it helps reducing the ambiguity of the word leadership.
Thank you for stating this difference between leadership and management. And of course, now I have not only one question, but about 10 questions only from your last answer, which is absolutely rich. What you said inspired me something in a model like management is to manage assets or acting, and leadership is more a state of being. Mm-hmm. Just for now, is that something that you agree with?
There are a lot of, what's the word in English? let's say, stock sentences regarding leadership, like, the idea that you're either born a leader or not. This is kind of a funny idea to me. I like to believe that we all perform some act of leadership once in a while. So leadership is an activity, is not a job. And an act of leadership is the moment in which you influence your environment for the best, hopefully. And it has nothing to do with your title. So if you look at the literature about leadership in the last 30 years, there's been kind of a shift. In the last 30 years, many books, or let's say practices for leadership, they try to teach you techniques that you can use to be a leader. And then again, we see this a lot with the advent of social media, and so, but they teach you techniques of communication, the way you use your words or you use your posture. It's all about a kind of fake personality that you wear if you want to influence somebody. Up to 30 years ago, more or less, leadership was more about the inner qualities of the human being that was for some reason manifesting leadership. And these qualities were, for instance, reliability, honesty, honor, and stuff like that. So it had nothing to do with what you did. It was more about what you are and the qualities that you have as a human being. That has been kind of lost in the last few decades. And now people look at leadership like a practice more than the way you approach your life and the people around you.
Yeah, that's very important, Andrea, and thank you for stating it and underlining it. That we are all leaders. If you agree, I mean, everyone is leader of his or her own life. So that's we can manifest acts of leadership on everyday basis if we are connected to our leadership. So yes. Yeah, so this is important. And you also mentioned the DILTS model, which is very much around purpose, and someone once we had a discussion, and she said that purpose is not an asset; it's also a way of being. So yes, what do you think about that?
I like the word intent better than purpose. And some people say that the space in which your intent and your awareness intersect, that's where you manifest your leadership. So awareness is your self-awareness and the awareness of the world around you. So when this awareness intersects your intent and you act in that space, that's leadership. And your intent, of course, is deeply connected to your values. You act in a certain way because of the way you think and what you believe in and the values that you live by. But then again, these are very generic way of looking at leadership. And I also like to think at what we can do as leaders in organizations. Because as you were saying, Juana, everybody is a leader. And I believe that that's true also in organizations, even if you don't have an appointed title, but every time somebody agrees with you and want to follow your advice or follow your initiative, in that moment, that's a small or big act of leadership. And it has nothing to do with your role in the organization. It has to do with the fact that other people believe in you. hopefully because you're an honest person.
Wonderful, Andrea. I love this definition when we really come deep down to our own authentic being. and as I understand it, it's somehow, if you are authentic, you become a model that people can follow, or can become a role model. There's since some time now, I would love to ask you this question. You are saying that a leader is someone that other people want to follow because she or he is a role model. And after a little in the conversation, you mentioned the leader as being at service of the purpose or the following the intent. So can you say more about, in the same time, a leader being someone that people wants to follow, and in the same time, she's at the service of the people that wants to follow her?
Yeah. Supportive leadership or servant leadership is one of the ways of leading, of course. I think that a good question that everybody should ask themselves if they find themselves in a position of leadership is, which kind of followers do you want to have? Which kind of followers do you want to attract? If you want people to be inspired by what you say and you do, then again, even in organizations, if you're, for instance, if you're a team leader, right? Maybe you're just a team leader of a group of 7 guys, and you really care for their professional life. You care for instance, you believe that sharing knowledge is a value for humanity, and you believe that the smarter we become as individuals, that's to the benefit to all of us. So if you promote a culture as a leader of knowledge sharing, experimentation, accepting mistakes, because you think that this is a good thing for people, for their own growth professionally and also as individuals, then your leadership is probably oriented in that direction. So you, and people will trust you, will follow you, because they recognize that what you do is not in your own interest, but it's in somebody else's interest as well. Now, not everything you can anyway apply servant leadership. There is this concept in the Agile communities that the only way of leading is by being a servant leader. Servant leadership is an extremely advanced approach, because it's basically a form of leadership in which your intent is to create other leaders that will replace you. That's the only way of being a servant leader. You care so much for other people's growth and development that your ego is not really important compared to what other people can achieve with your help and support. But you can do that only at a certain point. There are other situations in which being more assertive, or being more assertive is probably not the right word, but giving clearer instructions to people is perfectly fine. Especially, for instance, if you have a junior team, you have a team of people with very little experience in something, they need to be told what to do. And you cannot just support them as they make their own mistakes, because you can allow people to make mistakes only if that is safe for them to do. So if you create an environment of safety, then you can allow for mistakes, or let's call them experiments. But if people are not yet to the point so that what they do is safe, even if it's wrong, then you need to tell them what to do. If you need to start a fire, you cannot tell a 5-year-old, go and start a fire. You need to tell this guy exactly how to start a fire. and you need to supervise, and you need to correct mistakes. But then at a certain point, you can just support them as they experiment because they understand safety first. So yeah, then again, servant leadership is very, very important in an agile environment because we need to experiment and learn constantly to be able to adapt to a fast changing world. So servant leadership is the way we create a culture of experimentation and not of a culture of control. At the same time, then again, is not the only way of leading. And that I like to remind this, especially in the agile circles, it's perfectly fine even for an agile leader sometimes to tell people what to do if it is in their interest, not in your interest. Yeah.
So this is a key point, as you say, that a leader is acting in the interest of the group. And somehow, tell me if I'm wrong, the leader serves the group that will follow him because he serves the group. And this seems to be very, very important, as you say. You've mentioned also a very important element, which is the safe place. So and a culture of experimentation and learning. So I would say that probably for your leadership means to create that safe space and the culture of learning. And how do leaders do that?
It depends. It depends on what we mean by safety, because then again, there are many forms of safety. We were having a little chat before this recording, and I told you I'm working now with an oil and gas company. So for them, safety means that their plant doesn't blow up and people get killed. That's a good form of safety. But there's also safety of the workers on the assembly line. You don't want people to lose a hand while they are assembling one of their meters, for instance. So that's physical safety, but there's also economical safety. You don't want people to screw up a project and create a damage of millions to the company. There's psychological safety. You don't want people to feel threatened if they do or say something that is not very well accepted by others. So there are many different forms of safety. Now we're very good in the working environments to take care of physical safety of our people and the safety of the products that we create. That's very, let's say, that's very well clarified by the law. Okay. We have regulations that say how something should be safe. But in terms of psychological safety, there is nothing that tells you what it means to create an environment of psychological safety, except for your understanding of people. So what a leader can do to create an environment of psychological safety is to accept diversity, for instance, to accept diversity of opinions, or diversity of perspectives, diversity of backgrounds, diversity of personalities. When we are able to accept this diversity and to leverage this diversity to make the group or the company smarter, then that's a good example of leadership geared towards a safe environment. I don't know if I answered you. I'm just,
Yeah, that's great. That's absolutely great. Yeah, because actually, I think I had two questions in one. It was about how does a leader take care of the safe space, and thank you for really mentioning the different meanings of safety. And the second one was about creating an environment of learning, continuous learning.
Thank you. I'd forgotten that part. I think that learning starts when you accept that sometimes you don't know what you don't know. Or let's translate this in complexity terms. Now, people work in a very complicated environment, usually they are experts. So if you need to build some very complicated device or maybe some very kind of complicated application, if you do information technology or a complicated financial service, whatever, you need good experts. And usually the experts know what they know and they know what they do not know. For instance, that's an example that maybe you have heard me making before. But if I take my car to a mechanic to fix some problem, maybe I don't understand where the problem can be, but the mechanic, being an expert, knows where to check for faults. Basically, he knows what he doesn't know about the correct functioning of my car. So he knows where to look and he knows where to take action because he knows what he doesn't know. For instance, he knows that he doesn't know if the battery is charged, for instance. So he goes and checks the battery because he knows that he doesn't know that. But what we do in a complex world, most of the time, we do not know what we don't know. There are things that happen and we had never imagined that something like that could have ever happened. Like you have a competitor that comes out with a brilliant idea that you didn't even think it was possible to have. Or pandemics, for instance. Okay, 1 year ago, you were having a beautiful business plan and pandemics were not on your horizon, and now the world is different. So in a world in which you accept that you don't know what you don't know, the only way of moving safely, and also I'm connecting to safety here, the only way of moving safety is by experimentation, constant experimentation. Because by experiments, you can scan your knowledge, so to speak, and you can find out the blind spots. So you need to experiment constantly. And when you experiment constantly in a safe environment, you create a culture of learning. But you need to accept the fact that the world is not as predictable as you would like it to be, especially if you come from a 20th or now 19th century mindset in which everything was slower, everything was a bit more predictable, and our plans usually turned out the way we thought they would, but now this is not so true anymore. So experimentation and adaptation is actually the only strategy that works.
Thank you, Andrea. You for making also the bridge, the link between safety, place, and learning. Learning is a way to create a safe place. That's beautiful. That's a beautiful insight. Thank you for this gift.
Yeah, and the other way around as well. You need safety to experiment. And by experimenting, you get safety. Yeah,
exactly. So I won't ask you that question, what is the thing to start first, creating safety of learning, because I think it's a tricky question. Unless you really have an idea on that, the chicken or the egg. If not, yeah. What would you?
I think that where would I start from?
Yes.
I would start from safety.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's actually one of the few important responsibilities of an Agile leader to create a safe space. Mm-hmm. People cannot follow you if they don't feel that they are free to follow you or not to follow you. Mm-hmm. And to be able not to follow you, they need to feel safe not to follow. Mm-hmm. If they're not feeling safe not to follow, you don't have a safe place. So I think that's actually more important than experimentation, which is also important, but safety is a good foundation for experimentation.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. That's That's so deep, Andrea, that leadership is somehow a posture where the leader encourages the free will of everyone. And when you said yeah, they can follow and they can not follow. Yeah, that's beautiful. You were mentioning Agile, and before we get to the to the participants' questions, I do want to ask you two last questions, and the first of the two would be, and Agile in all this. You mentioned Agile leadership. We talked a lot about Agile, about leadership, but what does Agile leadership mean?
I think we touched upon a lot of the traits of Agile leadership already, because at the beginning of our conversation, we were talking about leadership in general, and we said you lead when somebody follows you. Mm-hmm. And you really lead when somebody really and freely wants to follow you. But then we made a connection with leading in a complex world, leading in a world that is much more unpredictable. In fact, so unpredictable that the only way to move around is by experimenting constantly. And so I believe that Agile leadership is a form of leadership that is very well integrated with this mindset of constant experimentation and free will. So yeah, a good Agile leadership promotes this kind of environment. I think we actually discussed it.
Okay.
Without knowing it.
Oh, thank you. It's always good to confirm it. And you also mentioned, Andrea, at the beginning of our conversation about your own model.
No, sorry, maybe I used the wrong word. Mm-hmm. I don't have a model. I don't believe in leadership models. I've studied and practiced a number of leadership models. I have my take on leadership, not necessarily a model. And then it also depends on which kind of leadership you're referring to. One thing that I like, aside from DILS, which is, as you mentioned, is purpose-driven, and this is more about personal leadership, the way you create more self-awareness, and you learn to act, not to react. So you learn to act out of your own will and not to react out of your, for instance, emotions or habits. And it's the responsibility process model by Christopher Avery, which I love it for its simplicity and also because it's very profound at the same time. So it's all about learning to be so self-conscious that you identify your emotional states, like a state, for instance, of blame or guilt, of stuff like that. And when you're able to identify that, you have a better chance of not reacting out of your emotional state, but you learn to own what happens. You learn to own your thoughts and your intent, and you act out of your free will and power. Now, starting from that, if you combine that with a little, let's say, dampening of the ego and more attention to the interest of us as a whole body of people, then that's a good starting point for being a good leader, I believe.
Thank you so much, Andrea, for your deep insights. Very inspiring for me. Now, and I talk for myself, but I'm pretty sure that it's the same for the participants. And I want to leave them the floor. And there's a question from Inge, who is here since a little bit of time, actually at the beginning, from the beginning of our dialogue. And Inge's question is manipulation per se wrong? Inge, do you want to come and specify more? If you care, you can put your camera on.
I've seen the question in the chat, and probably I get the gist of it, but Inge.
Yeah.
Hello, nice to meet you, Inge.
Hello. Put on my video. No, the thing is that leadership has an intent, yeah, and I think there is a form of manipulating. If a chiropractor manipulates you, that's not wrong. That's helping you, and that's why I had it talk to me in another session that somebody said, another coach said to me, yeah, but what's wrong about manipulating? In fact, yeah, we manipulate, but it's the intent that's important.
Yeah, that's a good point. Thank you. I think that in the end, the confusion is all about semantics. So it's all about the meaning we give to a word manipulate, because it can be positive or negative. So we just need to clarify that. For me, well, first of all, we know that it's impossible not to have an influence on other people, whatever you do or you don't do. Even if you sit silent in a room with other people, you're sending out messages. Like, for instance, I am silent, I'm not interacting. That's a message that you're sending, even if you don't want to. So we all influence the people around us, whether we want it or not. Now, for me, in my own vocabulary, so I'm not saying this is the right meaning, but in my own meaning, the difference between manipulating and influencing is you manipulate someone if you do that in your own interest. So if I influence you in my own interest, for me, in my vocabulary, that's manipulation, and I don't consider that a good thing. If I influence you in your interest, then for me, that influence is a good thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it's just semantics in the end.
Yeah. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Thank you, Inge, for asking this question. It's good for you. The answer is good for you.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions?
I see some fellow Italians here. So.
Yeah. Put the question in the chat or unmute yourself and ask the question.
Massimo here. Ciao, Andrea.
Ciao, Massimo.
I was very interested in what you said about psychological safety. In the past, I've participated to large initiatives in large companies to introduce Agile at scale, for example. And the main thing was, let's find the right target operating model. But nothing was talked about psychological safety. What is your experience about that, about this new, how would say, fashion about agility at scale, but maybe without thinking too much about psychological safety or experimentation or free thinking?
Thank you, Massimo. It's a very deep question. For me, when we talk about of agility, we're actually talking about a number of things. There is one component of agility, which is the process component. So even with simpler forms of agility like Scrum, we have a very simple process, which is based on iterations and cycles and stuff like that. So that's the process part. Then we have another component of agility, which is the engineering part. Now, regardless of what you do, it could be software or it could be hardware, I don't care. But when you design something, if you want to be able to adapt easily to something that you don't know, because you don't know what you don't know. Okay, so you need to design with the idea in mind that things might change unexpectedly, and that is going to influence your engineering design. So you have the process part, you have the engineering part, and then you have the cultural part of Agile or agility. Because what we've been talking about in the last 40 minutes is about the way you lead, the way you follow, safety and experimentation and diversity, and this is all the cultural part. Now, I see a lot of times I see people going into organizations and just promoting the process part with total disrespect, I would say, for the cultural or the engineering part. So I come into your company and I teach you how to scale your iterations on 50 teams. That's a process. But then again, this process exists only because we have people that are operating inside and with that process. And so if we neglect the cultural part, and if we neglect the engineering part of what we do, our agility is only fake agility. And it's sad because most of the time these companies are saying, oh yes, but it's getting better now, because indeed they do get a little bit of benefit from the process, but they are missing the largest and the most important part, which is the cultural and the engineering part of what we do. So, but because they see an improvement, they think, oh, that's agile. And they stopped. They don't even think about trying to create to change the culture. Also, because unfortunately, the people who have the largest influence on the culture, which is top managers, are the least interested in changing the culture. Very frequently, because their position and role and benefits, they depend on the kind of hierarchical culture that we have created for decades in organizations. So it's a very big topic, Massimo, very big topic. So I don't have a solution. I'm just saying, please do not neglect the culture, the architecture, and the process, because we need all of three to be able to bring about agility in our companies.
Thank you, Andrea.
My pleasure.
Thank you for the question, Massimo. Is it okay for you? Or you?
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other questions from the participants? That was very important what you say, don't neglect culture and how we usually neglect it, also because it's too complex, maybe.
Yeah, it's not tangible. You cannot measure it easily. You cannot see it immediately. So it's a very, then again, I'm using this word again, it's a very slippery territory when you talk about culture.
Any other question?
Okay, may I ask you a question? When I say you, I'm asking you to the group. And you can just reply in the chat if you feel like it. And the question is, do you remember which was your most recent act of leadership? And just take a minute, think about it. What was your most recent or an act of leadership that you remember? Oh, you're starting to lose people.
Ooh.
Scary question.
Alois, you have a question or you want to add?
No, I wanted to exchange, but that's something I think we already discussed also in the past together, Joanna. And just yesterday, actually, I was quite late in the evening with two let's say leaders, and they were exchanging on the, let's say, the power of or the importance of vulnerability. And that posture, not to say I'm, let's say, inferior to you, but to say I admit and I allow myself to show vulnerability to the others. And vulnerability also goes for me, I mean, for in our discussion with the capacity also to retrospect on yourself and to say how you can improve, etc., etc.
Yeah. Thank you. That's a very important topic. I have two things to say probably about the vulnerability. First of all, is that the moment that you show vulnerability, you're basically showing people that it's possible and it's acceptable to be vulnerable and to show vulnerability. Yeah. So basically you promote psychological safety by showing your vulnerability. And the second one is about 1.5 years ago, I was speaking at a conference in Portugal, and it was a conference about leadership, but there were also some people from the military speaking at the same conference. So I had the privilege and the pleasure of having a chat after the talk with a military psychologist. And he was telling me that what they are finding is that even in the military, which you would think is very assertive and top-down, they are noticing that the strongest bond in terms of leading and following is when somebody who is higher in rank is able to empathize with what is happening to somebody else. So if you have like a young soldier and the commander says, I've been in that situation too. It was hard for me, and that this is what I did when I was in this situation that you are in at this moment. So creating this kind of empathy and showing vulnerability, even in the military, creates the best bonding and leadership. So yeah, very, very important. Very important.
By the way, also while you are speaking about military, discussed that the ability to manage our fears actually, and to
which fears. I'm sorry, you broke up for a second. You were talking about managing your fears.
Managing your fears and so that you allow yourself also to express the fact that you have fears and just that's also I think in parallel to vulnerability.
Yes, and it's possible that the gate to being able to do that is to then again let go of your ego. So absolutely. One thing is your formal role. In your formal role, you have certain responsibility, but as a person, if you don't identify yourself with your role, with your position, with your status, you're able to keep those two distinct. Then it's easier to show vulnerability and your fear, because it's not me. I'm still able to function properly as a manager or as a commander, whatever, and that's my role. But as a person, I don't need to be so attached to that image, and maybe that can open up a little bit of space in which you can empathize more and show your vulnerability a bit more without losing your role. Because that's a fear. I lose my role otherwise. Yeah.
Thank you, Andrea. Alois, how are you going? Are you fine with the answer?
Absolutely. Yeah, great.
He was smiling like crazy.
Thank you. Thank you, Alois. Thank you, Andrea. Anyone else wants to ask a question. Ivana, hi, long time.
Hi guys.
It's so good to see you again, Ivana.
So
I
happy
missed
to
you.
see you. Andrea, Anna, Inge, so happy to see you guys. And probably I know someone else, but I don't see the video. So I don't know if it's exactly a question. So first to kind of note two things about the leader inspiring leaders, which for me is key, that I don't think only servant leadership provides that. For me, they're almost like these are separate things, you know, your style of leading and your passion intent to create or help others grow as leaders. I don't think it's only in servant leadership. Another point, I really like what you said, that it's about the acts, right? That it's about leadership is an act. But I think an interesting thing to add to the table, and I'm interested to hear your thoughts on it, is that in a sense, we have the conversation about this one style, this one model, this one type of leadership, while in fact, so for example, I struggle with the label, but I guess I tend more towards the how can you ensure that it's authentic? Yeah, whatever leadership tools you steal, does it resonate with you? Do you work in your values? And I think you pretty much talked about the same thing generally, and the intent and the values you mentioned. But I think one thing I would like to share more often is you actually would benefit in developing and having different styles in yourself. Yeah, as you said, to learn about different styles, because and I'm not talking about situational leadership, but that in different occasions, in different states of the complexity, you actually need different tools. They should still resonate with you and your values, but you kind of, so I was wondering whether in this direction you have some, I don't know, examples or cases, or
Well, I'm just looking at taking a look at the clock, so time is almost over. But the first thing that comes to my mind is even Snowden in Kinevin 20 years ago, 15 years ago, I don't remember exactly, in his first paper, he was talking about different styles of managing depending on the obvious or complicated or chaotic or complex situation. But I really like what you said, Ivana, that whatever your approach is, it should resonate with you. Because I don't believe that you can provide a good example of leadership if you're not true to yourself in the first place. So, for instance, there are situations in which you want to be the expert. You want people to follow you because they trust that you have the right knowledge for the job. So, and they follow you for that. But other times, people might decide to follow you because they like the way you dance with uncertainty. The way, for instance, you admit that you do not know and you are willing to dance with that. Now, these are two completely different styles of leadership, but I love what you said. Whatever you do, it should resonate, it should be true. It should resonate with you. Yeah. And it has nothing to do with situational leadership or other, more, let's say, pragmatic approaches.
Andrea?
Yes.
Have you ever heard of transformational presence?
Not really. No.
Because, well, I had just one talk in a conference, and in transformational persons, you ask yourself the question, which person do I need to be, or what hat do I need to put on in this situation? Mm-hmm. And that resonated very much with me. And also what you say is, yeah, the kind of leadership that you show is very dependent on the situation, whilst being authentic, of course.
Yeah. Good point. Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
No, go on, Andrea, please.
No, I was just saying, I like this approach of asking you the question, which is the best hat to put on in this context. But as far as it is not like a coat you put like a mask. Okay,
Mhm.
if it is a tool, that's okay. If it is a technique or that's a different story. Yeah, yeah.
I just
So,
like the fact that you consciously ask yourself the question.
Yeah.
What is the best thing I can do in this situation? And I think that was right about it.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you, Inge.
Thank you, Inge, for bringing this up. And thank you so much, Ivana, for your question. Is that okay for you? You're the answer. Super. Super. Thank you, Ivana. So nice to see you, and Inge also, old friends and new friends as always. Also such a pleasure. We are a little bit over time. It's 4:07. So the session should end here unless there's a really burning, urgent question that someone wants to ask and some of the participants are willing to hear the answer. And unless that's the case, I thank you all for being with us. Thank you so much, Andrea, for having accepted this invitation. I am sorry for the one participant that just came in at 7 p.m. I think there have always been still a mix about the timings, but yes, it's ending now, and it was such a blast, Andrea, to be with you tonight, and thank you to you all. I wish you bon appetit, and see you again for the next dialogue. I will still put in the chat before you go the link to the mural, so you can leave the insights. It's open, so even after the session, you can, so please do it. Thank you, everybody. Bye for now.
Yeah, thank you for being here, and thank you, Anna. You take care.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm your
It was really a pleasure.
Agile Leadership DJ. Bye.
Ciao.
Bye.